All right, welcome, guys, and we are back for another live stream on A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. We're going to talk about episode 3. If you guys have any questions throughout the stream or as you're rewatching this back, if you want to ask some questions, any questions that you guys asked that I think are really interesting, maybe we'll make it into a segment for the Sunday night show. Those are always a little difficult to plan, given as I'm watching the episodes, I'm trying to come up with topics and all that stuff, so we can keep conversation flowing between the four of us on those shows. Feel free to ask those. And so we're going to discuss episode 3 in a preview, talk about what I expect to see, some of my predictions. So there will be spoilers in terms of the events of the books. I haven't seen the episodes, so it is just me trying to predict what's going to happen. We'll talk about that. I also do want to reserve a little bit of a section of the stream to talk about season 2 of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, as they've already been filming it. They've been doing it for the past couple of weeks. And so that'll be finished filming, at least the initial filming, probably a couple of weeks, maybe a month after Night of the Seven Kingdoms season 1 finishes. So we'll talk about that, because adapting season 1 is very different than trying to adapt, or I guess I should say novella 1 to adapting novella 2, as they are fairly different. But we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the stream. So for a recap of where we ended at episode 2 to try and predict episode 3. Episode 2, the tournament has started a little bit. We didn't see a whole lot of it, but the tournament has just started. Dunk is trying to get into this tournament. That's really what episode 2 is all about. Him getting a new sigil, him getting accepted into the tournament by Baelor, him getting new armor, and all that kind of stuff. It's really building into what Dunk is going to be trying to do in episode 3. So episode 3, I expect it'll give us a more expanded role of the tournament. I think what we see in the novella is we see a little bit more of the tournament, specifically some of the characters who will play a larger role in this season. I think we're going to see a little bit of that. And you got to also remember is, given, again, big spoilers here. So if you have not read the novella, you do not want spoilers for Night of the Seven Kingdoms, this is your warning. But the end of episode 3, I very much believe, is going to be Aerion attacking Tanzell, like we've seen in the trailers, and then possibly the egg reveal at the very end of that episode as well. Why do I think that? I think that because of everybody that's told me episode 3 is where the series starts to get going in terms of the tension and the big moments. And it makes sense. We're going to be, after episode 3, halfway through the show. As crazy as that sounds, we're going to be halfway through the television show. And if we still don't have that big moment that starts to change how we view the series and starts getting the ball rolling, well, when are we ever going to see that? And so I think that's going to happen at the end of the episode. And why I'm bringing that up is I think episode 3 is going to spend a lot more time on Aerion specifically. I think we'll see him in the tournament doing some of his not exactly honorable actions, as well as I think we could see some additional scenes, possibly. Who knows? That one's left up to debate, because so far we've only seen the show through Dunk's eyes. And so if we get additional scenes of Aerion, it's going to have to be that Dunk sees this somehow. So I'm not sure if we'll see that necessarily, but it is possible. I think we're going to see more of Tanzell in this episode. I think it makes sense, given we've already seen in the trailers that there are at least one more interaction between both Tanzell and also Dunk. So I expect that we're going to see some more character work there. And this all makes sense, given the fact that Tanzell is basically about to exit the show, more or less, if they're following the novellas. And also the fact that, we're going to have a huge event at the end of the episode. You want to build up the characters so that we get more involved in them, we get more invested in them, with specifically Tanzell and Aerion. So I think that's the main focus of episode 3. Let me go ahead and look up what the runtime is for episode 3. I'm pretty sure it's similar to episode 2, but let me just check for you guys. So the runtime is approximately going to be 31 minutes. So it's actually the second shortest episode of the season. So for a lot of people that were complaining about the length of episode 2, it's not going to get a lot better. This is only going to be about a 30-minute episode, which I can definitely see that being the case. I think episode 3 is a little bit more predictable, possibly. I also think, given the title is The Squire. So I definitely think probably at the end of the episode, we're going to see the egg reveal. Another thing, though, that you could imply and infer from the title is this could be the time we see more of Dunk's backstory. I had thought we were going to see this in episode 2 based on the way that the teaser trailer at the end of episode 2 was showing the rest of the series. I think it happens here. Given the title, it makes sense that this could be where we get some backstory to possibly Dunk becoming a squire for Sir Arlen. So that would be really cool. It would be a nice interweaving in with what Egg's storyline could be in episode 3 as well. So I think there are 4 main things I would look at. I would look at the continuation of the tournament, basically following up where episode 2 ended. Number 2, I think, is we're going to see more of Arian. We're going to see him in the tournament, of course. We'll see him at the end of the episode, maybe something in between. The third aspect will be a focus on, Tanzell. As we know, there's at least one more confirmed scene between the two. And the fourth thing is really, I think we might see that backstory a little bit more. Now, who knows how they're going to do it, because the first 2 episodes have been different in how they've handled the flashbacks. The first episode was they were kind of interspliced throughout. They were at moments of either conversation or in the beginning as comedic kind of relief to the speech that Dunk is giving. And then in episode 2, we only saw the flashback at the very beginning of the episode, and that's how they kickstarted it. And then kind of time skipped then to the modern story. So I wonder how they do that in episode 3. Are they going to change that up on that formula? Or are they going to have it interspliced throughout? That's something I wonder. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Hi, Kirsty. How are you? How many episodes are in the season? 6 at 30 minutes. Then how long till the second season? So, Kirsty, if you're asking in terms of when we're going to see season 2, right now, they have stated they want to have a season of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms every year. So, where it's not like House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon is going to be 2 years, and mainly that's because a lot more CGI, a higher budget show. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, I believe, is actually a lower budget for season 2 than it was season 1, which in my opinion makes sense. Season 1, I think there's a lot more, how should I put this? It's a little bit more grander. You're at a tournament with a lot of high lords and you have jousting. All that can be kind of expensive, having horses and all that kind of stuff. Season 2 is, or at least novella 2 anyway, is a lot more focused on our characters. So if you don't like that aspect of season 1, that it's so focused on Dunk, season 2 is going to double down on that if they follow the novella. The novella is very much a character study of a couple characters with very little action. And I would say it's a lot lower stakes than the first novella is as a whole. So some people might like that. Some people might not like that as much. I know in terms of my own personal rankings of the novellas, novella 2 is by far my least. And I still love the second novella. It's just, I prefer the first and third. But there's other people, like I believe Quinn has the second novella as his favorite. So it really just depends what you like. And it's reflected in A Song of Ice and Fire. A lot of people like, the first 3 books more than the last 2. There's some people that love the last 2 books and, they still love the first 3 books, but they love the last 2 more. So that's kind of what season 2 is like. And this has kind of brought up that question, Kirsty, is I've seen a lot of people, because I've been looking at reviews for the show a lot and a kind of a follow-up from last week's stream. And a lot of people I think their expectations are a little bit out of whack in terms of what they thought the show was going to be. And I mentioned this kind of in the back half of yesterday's video, is I think the biggest problem so many people have with the show is they thought it was going to be Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon. Knight of the Seven Kingdoms isn't that. It's only 6 episodes. This is a show that very easily could have been a movie and probably should have. In terms of, look at the runtime. We have 42 minutes, 33 minutes, 31 minutes, 34 minutes, 37 minutes, 31 minutes. It's not that long. It's around 3 hours of time. And given what we've already seen in the first 2 episodes, there are definitely scenes that could be cut, even though I like them. There are scenes that could be trimmed down and could be condensed a little bit. And you'd have a movie that would probably be around 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I think that makes more sense than what they've done. But Yeah, it's a shorter show that is not focused on nearly the same things that Game of Thrones was focused on. Will we see Targaryens we haven't seen before in season 2? I would say no. Barring flashbacks, zero. Barring flashbacks, we will not see any new Targaryens. Again, like this story is not focused on the Targaryens in terms of we're not like looking at them through like a POV, for instance, like Game of Thrones. So I don't think so. But if we did get something like the flashbacks to the Redgrass Field, maybe we could see something there. Maybe we could see Daemon Blackfire. Maybe we could see Bloodraven. Maybe we could see Aegor Rivers. It's possible, but I don't think so. Yeah, so there will only be a 1-year difference. I'm not exactly sure when they have season 2 slated to come out. Let me do a little Google search. When is the Knight of the Seven Kingdoms season 2 supposed to come out? I'm pretty sure it's just going to tell me 2027. Yeah, it just says it's scheduled to premiere in 2027 on HBO and Max. So probably early 2027, you would assume, but we'll have to see. And I think that next year, because House of the Dragon won't be coming out, they might push it back a little bit, because I think the one thing that A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms doesn't get like on that first day is, I talked about this a lot already, but A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is an hour later, so it doesn't schedule, at least for Central Time in the United States, doesn't come out till 9 p.m. It's an hour later than the Game of Thrones shows did, and you're also, having the episodes drop during NFL season, and the NFL games basically end right as A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms comes out. And for American viewers, a lot of us are going to be watching football over something like A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, especially during the playoffs, where peak interest is, where a lot of TV ratings spike up. I think that with that being in mind, I think A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms might get closer to what House of the Dragon is slated to get, somewhere around June to May of this year. That's what I would expect for season 2 for next year. But who knows? Could be wrong on that. I love Rohan Weber. So I wasn't sure if that was what the casting was, because I have been seeing I think it's Spanish that the person is speaking, that I keep seeing this actress that's being shown. I'm assuming it's Rohan Weber. She's very beautiful, by the way. I might be more of a simp in season 2. Now, I was already a simp of her in the second novella, but she's a very attractive woman. That's all I'll say. Thank you for the kind words, Mal. I'm assuming that's what your name is, but you can double check me on that. I do appreciate that. I will say, Knight of the Seven Kingdoms content has done terribly. I mean, the only video that I would say that I've done a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms based on that didn't do terrible was the Arlen video. And it's like, of course, the one video that's negative and it's slightly critical of the show, the one that people watch. It's like, man, why can't we watch the video from yesterday where I talked about how I liked the show? That's a whole different conversation. But A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms has not done great YouTube-wise for a lot of creators, which is very interesting. I don't know. It starts at 2 p.m. in Australia on Monday. Very weird time for it to come out, but that is just time difference. I know Becky, for instance, she's from the UK, and the time is a little wacky there as well. The episode doesn't drop until, I think it's 3 or 4 p.m. for her. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head. So it's kind of crazy. And I know Becky pays to actually see the episode because it doesn't come out there's a whole thing I don't understand really, but it comes out more for people on TV later in the day. And so, yeah, it's one of those things where it's very hard to gauge how many people are watching the show because of the time differences and all that kind of stuff. So I see. I have seen some leaks and stuff for season 2, but not sure on that. How would you rate the first 2 episodes? Do you think this new showrunner is more faithfully dedicated to George R. R. Martin's material than House of the Dragon? So undoubtedly, the first 2 episodes have been very faithful to George R. R. Martin's work. I mean, they're taking scenes almost completely straight out of the book. They've done a very good job on that account. It's hard to judge, though, because in terms of season 1 of the novella, or at least of the show, they are given a very easy path to adapt the show or the story. I'm kind of wording this badly. Whereas House of the Dragon, it is harder because House of the Dragon has to create its own dialogue for a lot of the characters. It has to come up with characterizations for the characters that aren't necessarily in Fire and Blood. And sometimes in season 1, like for instance, they would succeed with that, really well. Other moments they would fail on that. And so I think the thing that, if you're asking in terms of adaptation, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms has been far better. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms has a different problem than House of the Dragon does. Like House of the Dragon's problem, especially in if you compare their first seasons, is House of the Dragon had problems with, it needed more episodes. It had time skips that greatly impacted the first season. Also, the writing for House of the Dragon season 1 could be all over the place. In terms of, they usually did pretty well on conversations, the smaller scenes that were not as impactful, or they were more character driven, but they really failed on payoff moments. So episode 9 is a payoff episode. It's probably the weakest of season 1. You look at a lot of the episodes that ended in season 1, episode 5, there were a lot of questionable moments. And so that was the problems for House of the Dragon season 1. Season 1 of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, the problem is you're adapting a little over 100 pages of source material into 6 episodes in which you're trying to captivate an audience and keep them watching, while also trying to make your show very different, tonally, just separating it from Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. And how do you do that in an effective way, going to more of a comedy-centered show, at least in the first 2 episodes. And for the most part, I think they've done a good job, but it hasn't been flawless. The comedy to me has not been flawless. For you people that watched the Arlen video, I haven't loved some of the flashbacks in terms of the comedy aspect, not even the Arlen depiction as a character. I haven't really loved some of the comedy, especially episode 1. And then also it's, how do you stretch the material? Right? Because we need to get to episode 3, and that's really where the first big moment of the show is going to happen. And that's 50% of the way through the show. That's the problem you run into, is how do you hook your audience in those first 2 episodes when there is not a clear hook in the first, 50% of the novella that they're adapting? And how do you retain that audience? I think that, to me, is the problems that both season 1 of House of the Dragon and A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms will have. But I would say that A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms has done a better job than House of the Dragon overall, factoring in season 2. I think if, I do want to have a stream where we talk about where does A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms fit in. And right now, it's not fair to say where that ranking is because we've only seen a third of the show and we haven't hit the big moments. But right now, I would say House of the Dragon, I would say season 1 is better than Knight of the Seven Kingdoms season 1. But it's not really fair to say that yet. So we'll revisit this question. It's a very good question. I'm kind of interested in what happens once we get to a spin-off show where there's hardly any material for it, like a Blackfire show. Yes. And I made a Blackfire video today. I recorded and edited it today. So I'm actually very familiar with wanting to talk about this. There's a lot of interpretation. So it's a lot more similar to House of the Dragon than A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is in terms of Civil War, not the most amount of source material, even less than House of the Dragon. How would a showrunner do that series? And so, for instance, we have huge moments that we're not exactly clear on. Daeron II tries to arrest Daemon before he can crown himself. He's informed of this by Bloodraven, but we don't know if Bloodraven is actually lying to Daeron to try and capture Daemon before a war breaks out, if he's telling the truth, if there's blind motivation going on with Bloodraven against Aegor. it's like those things they will have to fill in the gaps for. Even Daemon Blackfire, who would be a main character of that series, there's not a lot of characterization for him outside of the idea that he's very chivalrous, he's a great fighter, he seems very honorable, but outside of that, we don't have a lot of like, who is this character? Like right now, he feels kind of bland. There's not a lot of like, what are his pitfalls? What are his flaws? What makes him an interesting character outside of he's a great swordsman who's honorable? Like, for instance, Barristan Selmy. George makes him a very interesting character by showing some of his flaws. He's very comparable to like Ned, for instance. So a show that depicts a Blackfire rebellion, especially the first one, is going to have to fill in a lot of those blanks. And that's what I think it gets interesting is if Ira Parker is at the head of that kind of show, is George going to be able to fill him in on those kind of things? And that's what's going to be key to something like that kind of a show being done. Great question, though. Great comment. Clash of Kings has gone up in my ranking. I think it is now my second favorite after Storm. I love that. I'm a big Clash of Kings guy. I edited my Danny 5 video, which will go up next Tuesday. I forgot to put a post out for the last Sansa chapter that came out on Tuesday because I was uploading a video. It was left on the back burner, but Clash of Kings is my favorite book. I love the theming. I love everything about it. The storylines. I think it's great. Danny is an exception to that. So I feel kind of free because I'm done with the worst POV of Clash of Kings. Like I'm done with Daenerys. I don't have to reread her chapters and stuff. But I just got done doing my notes before the stream for Arya 10, which is probably top 5, top 10 chapter for me, and her escape from Harrenhal. So yeah, I'm a big Clash lover. I think the smart thing for the first 2 GOT spinoffs were to do stories with the most source material before going to stories that might not have a ton of source material. Yeah, and I talked about this when House of the Dragon was first being premiered and when it was first announced. It made perfect sense to do. It was a safe show. It follows almost the exact same format as Game of Thrones, where you have a civil war brewing and you have a king that's going to die that's going to break out over this succession crisis. You're going to have the Targaryens, everybody's favorite house. You're going to have dragons. You're going to have political intrigue. There's a good amount of source material for it. It made sense to do that. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms makes sense to follow up House of the Dragon because it's the kind of counterbalance to House of the Dragon, that it's a more smaller scale. It's much more personal. And you have a lot of source material for it. So I do agree. I think that HBO did a good job in the first 2 shows they selected. Like if they had done a sequel show or they had done The Long Night, those shows didn't make sense to kickstart and get people back into this universe. Hi, Cannibal. How are you? I could see casuals jumping off after episode 2 since the episodes ended weakly, in my opinion. Here's what I'll say to that. I think right now there could be that. We just don't know. It's hard to measure this unless HBO tells us this. All I can say, the only thing that you can really say in terms of the more casual audience is looking at things like the popcorn meter on Rotten Tomatoes. And even that's not a great system, because if you are passionate enough that you're going on Rotten Tomatoes, you're probably not like your average casual fan. So to me, it's hard to judge this, but I definitely could see a lot of people who have now watched the show for 2 episodes out of 6. So a good portion, you've watched a good portion of the show. Not a lot's happened yet. The show is struggling to create tension. It's struggling to create hooks for viewers that are not invested already into this story. And so really the crux of this show right now for the first 2 episodes is, are you bought in enough to characters like Dunk and Egg that you care to keep watching? And if that answer is no, you're not watching the show. There's no reason to. There's no high stakes as of right now, like with the other shows. And I've seen a very common trend through casual reviewers that don't like the show. The episodes are too small. I've seen a lot of people that really have been turned off by the poop humor from episode 1, and now just seeing full nudity scenes at the beginning of episode 2. I think that's a very bad premise that you don't like the show because of two comedy scenes that very much barely last. But I've seen a lot of people say that. I've seen a lot of people say that this show feels like no connection to any of the other shows and that it doesn't have high stakes, all that kind of stuff, that nothing has happened. They found it very boring. I think that is likely what a lot of not a lot, but the people that dislike the show or do not want to keep watching, that is probably the crux of why they don't. I'm mostly worried for A Night of the Seven Kingdoms season 2, since that's the weakest novella, right? At least I found not a lot happened. Yeah. And I am worried about season 2. Because season 1, I wasn't as worried, even though I had reservations, but I wasn't as worried because the first novella to me of the 3, well, I'd have to reread the third novella, but I think of the 3, for one, it's my favorite. And I also felt like it made the most sense that it could work as a show. Whereas the second novella, I mean, I'd have to go back and look at the pages, but there's not even going to a lot happen until maybe episode 4. I mean, like, think about what's the first big reveal of the second novella. So, spoiler here again, is that Sir Eustace was a Blackfire supporter. Like, that's the first big reveal. And like, that's not a crazy reveal. It's a good character moment. But it's not like, there's no action happening. There's no, like, I think for a casual audience, you're going to struggle to do season 2. And that's why I think season 2 of the 3 seasons is the one I could see them changing the most. Whether that's we're seeing more flashbacks to the Blackfire stuff or anything like that, I don't know. Season 2 to me is a scary proposition. And we're going to talk about this after season 1 finishes, of course, because we have to see how the season finishes. How do they set up season 2? I was going to talk about this a little bit with JC if he was able to hop onto a stream. He was not able to, but we'll probably talk about that in the future. But yeah, I think that this is a great point. I think you are definitely, I think, warranted in having some reservations about season 2. I think, yeah, if they can build upon some of the characters that the Blackfire Rebellion era has, that would be incredible. I had some conversations, some very pleasant conversations. You guys were very nice, even though a lot of you guys disagreed with my Sir Arlen video about could they improve Sir Arlen? If they give him more nuance and complexity, they could definitely do that here. If they do make Aegon the Conqueror more interesting or Daemon Blackfire, it definitely, you have a very blank slate for both of those characters. I think that the GOT franchise will continue as long as it makes money. When it stops making money is when HBO will stop it. They will milk it till it is dead. It's the same thing with Marvel. It's the same thing with Star Wars. When a company sees something makes money, it will keep going. Now, the elephant in the room there is what's going to happen with HBO if it goes to Netflix. That's when you start to have more questions. So, yeah. Hi, Maz. How are you? Could you see episode 3 ending at the campfire again? I don't know how it would. Because based off of where episode 3, I think, is going, I think the ending is going to be Egg's reveal. I think that makes sense to end the third episode, where you finally have that gut punch episode where it's like, okay, now the stakes are a lot higher. Dunk has basically been arrested. Egg has now said he's a Targaryen. We've had this conflict with Aerion. I think that's where it makes sense. I personally don't think they should do the long night because I think the White Walker plot line in the shows hasn't really gone anywhere. Based on the way that they concluded in season 8, I don't think anybody cares to see a long night show. So I don't think it's going to happen, at least in the future, like the very short-term future. I don't think we're going to see that in like the next 5 to 10 years, but we'll see. What are you looking forward to in episode 3? I am looking forward to Aerion Brightflame. So we have seen a little bit of his armor and what he's going to look like. That's why I put it in the thumbnail. I'm very excited because we only saw Aerion in one scene in episode 2. I thought he was really, really good. And so I'm really excited to see that performance. really excited to see more of the character. That's what I'm looking forward to probably the most, is just his character in general. That makes sense for casuals. They have no idea when this is or where they are. If it wasn't for the name drops, they'd hardly know this was a Song of Ice and Fire universe. Yeah, and this is one of the big things that if you are Ira Parker, if you're the United of the Seven Kingdoms team, you had to make a decision. How do we open the series? And I like that they didn't do what House of the Dragon did, where they're like, oh, well, this is where we are and all this kind of stuff. And Night of the Seven Kingdoms said, we're going to trust you that you're going to be able to watch this show without needing to know exactly where in the timeline we are and all that kind of stuff. And on one hand, that's great, especially for a book reader. And it's great for just setting the tone, going right into Ardalin's funeral, more or less. The problem lies in, if you're a casual, you're like, where are we? What's happening? You know, like, where does this fit in to the world? And that, I think, is one thing that the show hasn't done the best job of. Like, it hasn't really established, like, is this right after the dance? Is this right before Game of Thrones? Like, it hasn't done a great job of that. And so I think that would be something, Maz, that I think is a great point, is that if you're a casual viewer, you might be confused because of how little the show has really explained it, or even really, you know, had a conversation about that. You know, and we'll have to see. I don't know. Maybe flashbacks in the Redgrass field could help with season 2. Yeah, I think we're going to get some. There has to be something else in there. If they do what they kind of did for episode or season 1, where they're kind of just translating the book straight to the show and they're just adding in some extra scenes to pad out the runtime, it's season 2 is not. I don't think it's going to be good for especially the casual audience. I think they're going to add more scenes into season 2. I think they have to. I genuinely think they have to. I don't know if we're going to see more action, but I think if we do, it'll be like flashback type of stuff. I could see them really diving into Dunk's back. Again, this depends how much they handle in season 1, but I could very much easily see them leaning into more of Dunk's backstory, him with Arlen, and just like kind of, because again, you're going to have to pad out the runtime again. And so that I think could be something that maybe works. I don't know. We'd have to see. I think this is a good point as well. Have Dunk reflecting more on the events of season 1 could definitely work. I saw a reactor who hasn't seen House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones and is only watching Night of the Seven Kingdoms. That is a very bold thing to do, given I would say it's the least popular of the 3. What do they think of it? I guess that's very interesting. Yes, it seems like a lot of you think that, you know, possibly the ending of episode 3 is going to be the big egg reveal. I just hope they don't make bad spinoffs for Game of Thrones, like some of the Star Wars shows that were pointless. Yeah, I think that's a little bit of the concern. Is it seems like, you know, we're starting to get Game of Thrones content every single year. So we're going to have this year 2 shows in the span of a couple months. Next year we'll have a Night of the Seven Kingdoms season 2. The year after that will be House of the Dragon season 4, and that's conclusion. The year after that, and that year we're also going to probably have season 3 of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Then if we go even further, that next year will be season 4. And then after that, it gets murky. Are we going to see an Aegon's Conquest in there at some point? What are we going to see after that? First Blackfire Rebellion could make sense, because I think the goal for HBO is probably to have 2 shows running at the same time. One that, you know, if you're going to go for the smaller stories, being A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and then another one that's more of your traditional, what Game of Thrones fans expect, like your, you know, big political drama, your war stuff. And that could always just be, you know, Blackfire Rebellion, could be Maegor's War on the Faith, could be Robert's Rebellion. Like, you have a lot of content you can just sift through in terms of what war do you want to cover next type idea. I'll say this. Look forward to tomorrow. I have a video on this exact topic, Mal. But yes, Jon Snow officially a POV in the Winds of Winter. And given George's exact words, it does bring up some questions about when Jon gets brought back. But We'll talk about that in tomorrow's video. Do you think they'll postpone the Aryan incident to episode 4? No, they cannot. I don't think they can afford to. You know, if we're talking about I think you're talking about, the Tanzel stuff at the thing that kind of changes the entire novella, it's the big moment. They cannot wait till episode 4. They just can't. If they put that off for another episode, I don't know how casuals keep watching the show. I mean, we'd be 3 episodes in, and still there'd be like not a lot of tension building. There wouldn't be that moment. We're halfway through the show. You know, we can't have it where we're, you know, what, 2/3 of the way through, and then we finally have some moment that hooks in viewers. It's going to be next episode. I'd bet a lot of money. From what I've seen so far, he doesn't. He very much has like the Hightower, like Targaryen sigil. He has the green with the yellow, which I thought was really weird, but I don't know. I don't know. Aryan incident will be episode 4, Trial of 7, episode 5, and episode 6 will be the fall. I just don't think so. I think that you have episode 5 and 6 right. I don't think episode 4 is going to be the Aryan incident. I don't think so. I saw a reactor that the Targaryens were gone by this time, that the person playing with the Dragon Coin was like how they play Old Republic critics and the New Republic era in Star Wars. Well, they're in for a rude awakening, I guess. Yeah, I'll just say that I feel like the show did not do a great job of explaining that. I feel we'll see a lot of Dunk's earlier adventures with Arlen throughout season 1. Yeah, I hope so. I hope that I enjoy Arlen in the future, but we'll see. I hope that isn't the total runtime, including end credits and the backstory interviews. No, I believe that just means the episode. Because usually I kind of time it. I look at my phone just to know how far we are through the episode when I'm watching. They're usually pretty accurate. So it should just be like the actual show, like going, not the credits and all that. Completely. I feel like that's kind of the consensus that chat has kind of come to. They are filming season 2 right now. They are a couple of weeks into it. It's House of the Dragon season 3 in June. We don't have a confirmed date yet, but the rumor is in June. Yeah, I try to stick away from this. I try my best to. There's multiple videos that I've like said, I've basically spoiled it with not even thinking it and just had to cut the whole thing. So I don't blame people for accidentally spoiling it, but I definitely try not to do so. I don't think I've screwed up when I've wanted to, like in terms of streams where we're spoiler free. We're not talking about spoilers. I haven't said anything, but yeah. I'll just say this. If you haven't read the novella, you should just read the novella and not watch YouTube content. Blackfire Rebellion show would be insane. I would love to see that, Dre. It would be fantastic. We need more Blackfire merch. And so that would be a great way of getting it. I think Dunk and Egg would have been awesome animated. We would have got to see it come to life the way George envisioned it, and the animation would have really captured the heart of the story. I think they're doing a good job so far, Kirsty. I just think that the show should have been a movie. I think it would have helped with the pacing. I think it would have felt more natural the way, again, because you wouldn't have just random endings in a movie. It would feel, I think, a better structure because you would have like your first, 45 minutes would be more like your build-up. Then the middle section would be the stuff we're going to get in episode 3 and 4, and then you'd have that climax. It just feels more natural as a movie than it does a show, but I still think they're doing a solid job. Episode 4 is called The Seven. I believe episode 4 is going to be about assembling who the 7 are going to be, more or less, Dre. Yeah, so far I haven't been super thrilled with like Arian's regular clothing. I thought his armor looked really cool. Now, is it Arian Bright Flame armor? Not particularly. It doesn't strike what I imagined, but I think that his armor does look cool, and I'm gonna judge it more on the performance than his wardrobe. We might see Barristan in later seasons. That's true. We might. We might. That'd be cool. My cat is decided she wants to sit on my PC. So Rhea, living up to her namesake, Rhaena, the Queen of the West, being a rebel. With Jon Snow confirmed as a POV, does that make you confident we're actually close to wins coming out this year? Maybe July would make sense since Book 5 came out in July 2011. Oh, you can see the okay. I was praying this would happen. For any of you guys that have been on my Instagram, you know this happens. I put this on Instagram. First time she's done it during stream. So what's a good angle here? I'm trying to like get out of the way. There is Rhea. This is her new favorite spot. She wants to be the queen of the show, I guess. Answering your question, sorry, I got distracted. I'll say this. I don't think we're close to wins winner. I don't want to be pessimistic. I don't want to complain because you guys get on me about this. I just think that there hasn't been any signs that that tell us that George has written anything. And him confirming Jon as a POV is like, that's something he would have known when he was finishing Dance. So I don't really think that tells me much. I mean, the novella has been out for like 20 plus years, so it's not too difficult to get spoiled. Yeah, this was something I found funny is back when I was making my videos on why every book could be somebody's favorite, I think it was titled something along the lines of like, why a Game of Thrones is the best book in the series. And then I would do the same thing for all five. And it was more like an analysis summary, what was great about those books. I remember having like multiple people that were like, wow, you spoiled this thing for me. And it's like, you're literally watching a review of the book. So I don't know. Well, hopefully that is the case. I personally have not followed any news on House of the Dragon season 3, so I don't know much about it in terms of like what book events happen. I know that they've said there's gonna be like 3 big things that are gonna happen and all that, but for me, haven't really been paying attention to it. Egg was insulting the Blackfires. Yes, Egg is a heretic. Not much else needs to be said. House Blackfire all the way. 100% agree. 100% agree. I misspoke. You are correct because Dunk is one of the 7, but you get what I mean. I'm dying to see the Blackfire rebellions. Yeah. Well, the question that we're going to have is we only really have a lot of information on like 2 of them, the first and the second. So I wonder if they'll try to adapt the other ones. I think that's going to really depend on if George writes Fire and Blood Part 2. Her eyes are as green as Shaggy Dog. Yes. She acts like Shaggy Dog too sometimes. From having her, I've noticed that girl and boy cats very different. Very different. Boy cats, I feel like, are a lot more cuddly, I guess. Okay, I shouldn't say that for her, but like she's very much, she'll like sit on you and like she wants attention on her time, whereas like a boy cat, one of my boy cats, you could pick him up and he's just like, yeah, I'm just cuddle time, whatever, you know. But she has a little bit of an attitude sometimes. Sometimes she likes to play. She likes to, I don't know. She again, she's named after her. You know, she's named after Rhaena, the Queen of the West, and she lives up to it. Lady Weber sure gave Sir Duncan a whole clout. Yep, I agree. Well, we did see Aegon at the end of season 2, so he is badly injured. Only the first Blackfire Rebellion is interesting. I really like the War of the Ninepenny Kings. I would love to see them adapt that further, but we'll see. I'm waiting for random people to come in the stream and just feel like, oh, why do you have this random pelt behind your head? That's what I'm waiting for. I have my fingers crossed for the Winds of Winter, but yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I want it to come out, but I just, at this point, I mean, George has not given us like a updated, like, oh, I've written this, more pages since this channel's been active. This channel's been active for like 4 going on 5 years now. Like that update of like, oh, he's 2/3 of the way through the book or whatever. That's been the same update since this channel started. So I don't know. But yeah, so that is kind of what I wanted to talk about. Just a little mini stream, talk about our preview for episode 3 and look at season 2, maybe some of our concerns, maybe the things we're worried about. And let me know down in the comments whether you're watching this after the fact, whether you're, watching this right now in stream. What do you guys want a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms wise, videos wise? Because I'm struggling to find what works for the algorithm and what you guys want to see. Because like, okay, you're going to sit, hold on. Because on one hand, I've tried like the analysis of the show, positive stuff, things I liked about it, did horrible. Character previews or like, who is this character? Done horrible. So the only A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms video that's done well has been a critical video of the show. And then that video got a lot of, people were not exactly thrilled with that take. So if you have things you want to see me cover with the show specifically, I will be covering other stuff, of course, not just the show, but given we're in the life cycle right now of the show, going to focus on that a little bit. What do you guys want to see? What do you guys not want to see? Just let me know. But thank you guys all for joining the live stream. Of course, we will be live right after episode 3 drops on either my channel, Ricky's channel, Becky's channel, JC's channel. All 4 of us will be live. So check any of us out after the episodes. I'll be live on Monday, same time as this stream was, 5 p.m. U.S. Central Time, to do my scene-by-scene analysis. Those are my bigger streams where I go scene by scene, giving you my full thoughts, and they're more of my digested thoughts, sleeping on it, doing my notes. So check those out. For Friday, I will have a video talking about Jon Snow being a confirmed POV, when I think he's going to get revived in terms of the book. And then next week, I'll have a Blackfire Rebellion video, basically because they've now been canonized in the show, talking about the first Blackfire Rebellion, why it started, and all that kind of stuff. Not sure what the second upload will be. I always hold that out for what happens in the episode if there's anything to talk about. But I will see you guys all in the next live streamer video. Bye, guys. And now we have this awkward pause where I waited for it to